Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Laugh Out Together show, hosted by the LOT Foundation. I'm Akshita, and I'm joined with Jen today to talk about girls, the societal effects on us, and our mental health.
And we're joined with our good friend Kashish.
Hi Jen, hi Akshita, it's great to be here with you today.
Okay, so since we're talking about girls and the societal effects on us, I think it's important that we start off by talking about the societal standards set for us. Because we've always been forced to act a certain way or talk a certain way. And I mean, even in some cases, sit a certain way. I think we've all experienced those times when we're in a dress and we can't man spread. So I just wanted to say, what do you guys notice as the different standards we have set for us? Any examples from your lives that kind of hiss you off?
I don't. Men are just deemed as the person who has all the power, and that's really annoying in some cases where there's people who actually believe that they're some kind of god, and so they like they tell you to do things. You could be wearing whatever. You could be wearing like comfortable clothing and they'll judge you for wearing comfortable clothing. But then if you wear like a skirt, then they will also judge you for that. And it's just like the double standard that is set for us, which is really unfair.
I completely agree, Jen. Especially the standard society is set for us, it's almost impossible to satisfy them. For example, as you said, just in dances is another example. Girls are expected to wear dresses, and it's highly uncommon for girls to wear anything else. And they're expected to sit pretty, wear makeup, wear dresses. And I feel these standards are really unfair to how women want to portray themselves.
I mean, I know for a fact, no shade to Kashish, but last year when she used to show up in hoodies every day, so many times, not only like guys, but other girls would be like, oh, why don't you try wearing better clothes to school? And this year, now that she is, everyone's like, why do you try so hard to show up to school? And it's just like, you can never find a balance. And I mean, with the dances, with prom coming up, I am so excited to see the girls trying to break that standard and pulling up in corsets and dress pants because, oh my God, so nice. But anyway, I do want to say that we talked about the different standards, especially when it comes to what we wear. But I feel like that does lead into effects on our mental health because not only are we so confused as to what we have to wear, but we're also judged. And when we're judged by other people, we start judging ourselves and we have worse body image. Anything you guys want to say about that?
I mean, that's definitely true. Like if you go and like walk into like any like clothing shop looking for like women's clothing, they're all like crop tops or like super tight fitting. And I feel like that's really bad for people who have low self-esteem and like can't view their body like it actually looks because of the fact that there's these standards and then there's all these like clothes that are put out especially for women.
Going back to the tight clothing, I personally know a lot of friends who try their best to like work out every day, and some even like stop eating for a while if it helps them fit this beauty standard of just, like being skinny, having whatever you need. And that's really unfair too, because women should be allowed to live the way they want, not the way other people expect of them.
Because you look at other people and you see someone and you'll be like, I want that body type. And you do everything you deem necessary to get there. And it's usually because your body image is so like harmed because of how like society judges you for how you look. And I think the body image, as Kashish was saying, leads to changes in eating. Like, I don't know, I've seen different eating disorders show up in my friends that I'm like, well, there's no reason for that because you should be like comfortable in yourself. And it's not their fault. It's just society's fault.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's like they set out so that everyone competes with one another to look how they're expected to be.
Yeah. I mean, makeup, like Makeup is such a mixed thing though, because a lot of people do wear makeup because they're just like, I like it. It makes me feel better. And that is valid. That is so respectable. But also when you feel like you can't get out of the house without wearing makeup, because then you're just like, oh, like I'm not good enough for society without makeup. Like acne. Oh my God.
I think in general, societal norms have an extremely high value. Like, for example, I was talking to my friend about makeup and she told me to never start wearing it because once she did, she couldn't stop wearing it. Like, once you start wearing it, you can't feel good about yourself unless you don't keep wearing it because people are expected to see you that way. And you're expected to like appear as your best no matter where you go or what situation it is.
I mean, yeah, like, okay, this is a weird example, but have you guys ever gone on TikTok and then seen those like famous or popular creators and they make TikToks without wearing any makeup? And then all the comments just talk about the fact that they're not wearing makeup. They're like, oh my God, you look so different. Oh my God, put makeup on. Or like when they do put makeup on, there's those comments like one wipe and it's all gone. And it's like, people don't let you feel confident no matter what you're wearing. And that does affect your mental health because you like waste time. You constantly are hyper focused on the fact that you have to make yourself look a certain way for society to affect you. Like, whoops. I meant accept, guys, to accept you. And I think Jen wanted to go more into this topic as well.
I mean, it's like, I feel like when creators do that and then they make a video where they're like, oh, like I have really bad mental health right now. Like all like everything that's going on, all the comments, like I need to go off. And then there also be people that are like, oh, you're like doing this for attention. Like the comments aren't even bad. You're just like overacting because you want the attention. So it's not fair to put so much on people and then expect them to handle it without saying anything about it.
I think tying this back into mental health, it can really make you feel like upset or even lead to like depression because no matter what you do, your efforts could feel useless because as Akshita said, it's either too much or it's too little. Like society is never satisfied. They want you to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And I think what we've learned from elementary school till now is that you can't be perfect. No one's perfect. And I don't know why society accepts that, but okay, well, given that this is all happening now, everything happens from a root cause. I mean, there has to be something that led into all of this. And I mean, I could blame the patriarchy and go that route, but honestly, I don't think that's the only reason. I think in history, I think Kashish is a much better fit person to talk about history than I am because I'm a STEM gal. But what in history led to this? Like, what got us to this point where women are so hard to be like perfect in the sense of society's images?
Okay, I think from the very start, we can all agree that men were deemed for their skills, they're skillful in works, jobs, everything, their strength. And women were kind of set aside and given the role of just, oh, stay home and take care of your kids. And that never went away because of popular belief. People had an unbelievable time like standing up to popular belief. And because of that, nobody made any attempt to like fight against it until the 19th Amendment, which leads back to history. There were some women who tried fighting against it, but the majority of the society still saw women that way. And since it's in our roots, it's nearly impossible to just put it all behind us.
Yeah, I mean, we can go into the whole political route and there will be all the issues that are so inbred into our society. But I think another reason that a lot of this is there is because women are not taken seriously. I mean, if we want to talk about something super simple, we literally had our ASB elections, recently at school. And a lot of the guys at our school were just like, I'm not going to vote for women to be woman to be on ASB, and we're literally high schoolers, so I don't know where that came from, but we're just not taken as seriously, and we have to work twice as hard to get there. And it's funny because the thing I just said is argued by so many men in our society, even though it's such a like obvious and common thing that's visible everywhere. And I'm pretty sure all three of us see it constantly. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the ASB videos, at least for people that were going for junior council next year, the men kind of just had really simple things and then try to do something like, oh, like cool or like flashy to make them stay in people's minds. They didn't really talk about their ambitions. And I feel like the girls did more about that than like they're actually trying to like prove that they can be on council and manage things rather than what the guys did.
I think that this is a small example that we can use from our school. And I feel like some of us might be a bit biased towards the girls, obviously. But in the broader spectrum, back to like the mental health aspect of all of this, when you're not taken seriously in any place, that definitely makes you start wondering your worth and if you're actually like, if you actually matter. Like, I mean, that's for my personal opinion. When I'm not taken seriously, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I not taken seriously? Am I doing something wrong? Like,
yeah, no, definitely. You get upset, and then if you try and express that, but like people can tell that you're still upset about it, then like there's those people that are like, oh, are you on your period? Like, is it all like the hormones that are like acting up? And that's so unfair, especially to the people that are like, oh, periods aren't even that bad. Like you bleed for like what, like a little bit for like a week and then you're done. Like you're over dramatic. It's nothing.
Yeah. Like before Kashish steps in, I just want to say like, also, like we were talking about periods, everything about women's health is so stigmatized. Like, for God's sake, if I decide to tell a guy that I am on my period, it is a big deal. Like, for me, myself, that was bad grammar right there. But anyway, I was at practice and I got my period. And then I was like, I ran to the bathroom and I come back and my coach was like, oh my God, what happened? Why'd you leave? Because we were doing sprints. And I think he thought that I was trying to get out of sprints. To be honest, I probably was. But that's not important. And I was like, oh, I got my period. And he was so uncomfortable. He was like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And I was just like, it's happens every month. It's a common human process. Like, it shouldn't be as stigmatized as it is. And I feel like women are less likely to go and ask for help for anything because it's so stigmatized.
I definitely agree. I also think even just like adults in general, like coaches, they're not meant, it's discussing the concept of period. It's so awkward and it's just shut down from society. Like a similar thing happened with my coach. I was in the middle of a game and I got it and I asked to be subbed out. And he's like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like just continue the game and you can do it after. Like they don't understand the pain we go through because they don't experience it firsthand. And because it's so stigmatized, there's no way to like educate others on what it actually is rather than just them not knowing anything about it.
Yeah. Lucky for me, one of my coaches is a health teacher. So 1 out of 2, guys.
I forgot what I was going to say. So just gonna.
That's okay. I'll jump in because I always have something to say. But as we were talking about this, the thing I mentioned a couple minutes ago, or a minute, I'm not sure how long it's been. Anyway, in history, that women, or not history, but commonly, women are just known to ask for help less. Now, I don't know how accurate the statistics are on this, obviously, because you can't trust statistics for everything. But statistically, women are known to ask for help less. And that is probably because so many things regarding our health and our well-being have been stigmatized. Now, we all live in Irvine, California, a place where we have access to so much. It's a more of an upper middle class society. Like, we definitely are more privileged, but because of religion or beliefs or just being a smaller, less equipped place, there's a lot more stigma there. I mean, I don't think any of the three of us are fit to talk about this, but from visits to, like, when I've gone to India and I've gone to what we call gaons or villages, there has been so much stigma around anything. When you're on your period, you aren't allowed to be doing so many normal tasks. Like, you aren't allowed to cook for people. You aren't allowed to pray. You also aren't allowed to help with a lot of things because it's supposedly a gross phenomenon. And in villages there, women have to go to the bathroom at 4 a.m. because they cannot be seen going to the bathroom throughout the day. So they can't go to the bathroom when men are awake. And I feel like these kind of things, even though not only are they upsetting, but they also affect how you think of your value in society. When you are shown as the inferior person, it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel, weak and like less. And that definitely affects your mental health. I mean, that's what I've seen. Have you guys seen anything like this?
I think women are sort of dehumanized in country like that. Like, personally, I did research for like a law project, and it was El Salvador. I know women, when they're on their period, they're completely shunned from the house. They're not allowed to sleep in the same room as a guy. I feel like it's kind of the concept like, oh, how can a woman have something I don't? It must be a disease, because they're not able to believe that women can have other abilities and, possessions, things like that they're not able to have. So in El Salvador, women aren't allowed to sleep in their houses. They have to go literally sleep outside, no matter like what the weather is or the situation is. And they're basically treated like shit because they're not given the materials needed either. Like, how pads and tampons, obviously it's accessible to us here. In countries like that, it's not accessible at all. And they have to make use of like papers and towels and things like that to take care of themselves.
Oh my God, I'd hate that.
I feel like, okay, I could be totally wrong, but I feel like years ago I heard something about where someone was like, oh, the feminine products like pads, tampons, those are all privileges. Like, you guys should be paying more for that than you actually are, because like you don't need them. Like, you don't need them. And I got so upset like hearing that, because the flows are pretty heavy. I would say that they're pretty heavy, and that we kind of need that to like walk around. And
I mean, like, for God's sakes, if guys want them that bad, you can have them. Like, I don't mind.
They don't know how to use them, but like, go ahead, educate yourself.
No, not the pads. Like, if they complain that we have periods and it's so gross and this and that, you can have them. You deal with them. Like, what? I mean, honestly, maybe it's because I am a woman and I can't picture that mindset, but I think it's so messed up. And not only messed up, I don't understand it. And honestly, I don't know how I'm supposed to understand it, but that's like, I mean, I just feel like everything in a woman's life, from her romantic life, I mean, I think we're like 15, 14, 16, 17 years old. And we're expected, oh my God, Kashish's face when I didn't say 16 years old. Anyway, but we're all this age and we're expected to get married. Like, have you guys had the conversation with your parents where your parents are like, just go marry a rich man, or just go get married. We'll just get you married. Like, as much as sometimes when I'm fed up with work, that's like, okay, sure, do it. I don't have to work then. It's so upsetting because it's like, why am I expected to get married? Like, the stigma around being an unmarried woman or a widowed woman is just so bad. Like, obviously, I accept that it has gotten much better. Like, if we were in the time Bridgerton was made, being unmarried is like, awful. Like, it's a sin. But also, if you're unmarried, but you're in a relationship, or like you're not in a committed relationship, you're in many relationships, that's really bad. I mean, I would say the word, but I don't want to say the word. But we get called awful things, and they make you feel awful about yourself, but sometimes you just want like pleasure or love, and that's wrong for us to have. And honestly, no one calls out a guy for this. Like, give me an example of when a guy was called out instead of the girl. Even in high school relationships, like, it doesn't happen. It's just so like brought into our lives. Now, we're not fit to talk about love and all of that, so I'll move on. But I mean, I don't know. That's just what I see.
I mean, you could kind of tie this into mental health too, because personally, every time I bring up law school with my parents, they're like, oh, but you have to get married before that. I was like, no, I don't want to get married until I'm successful and like rich, basically. I don't want to be dependent on a guy.
Same. I want to get married when I'm 35 and I'm an actual surgeon and I'm like set. Like, I don't want to get married. Also, having kids, I don't want to have kids, but I guess that's like a sin.
You'll be shunned from your family if you do something like that. Like, things like that. Maybe it depends on culture, but it's so common nowadays. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Like, Jen, like, have you seen this too? Because I mean, I know I was talking to you about this too.
I mean, a little bit. I feel like it's more like I can't find the correct words for this. I don't know. Like, I'll bring up like marriage and like kids and stuff to my parents, and they'll be totally fine with it. If I talk about careers, then they're more hesitant to hear about it. You know, because it's like responsibilities. Like, oh, I mean, go to college, like do that, like graduate, but then afterwards, focus more on getting married, because getting married young and then having kids young is like so much better. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah, and here's my thing. I'm not going to say that men don't have to deal with anything. Like, it's not that they're completely blind to this. It's not like their parents don't put this pressure. It's not like society puts this pressure on them. But I'll just say women do have it worse. And maybe that is because when women were like in the start, let's just look at some patriarchal societies. They all gave women the one job of giving birth to children, creating a home, creating a family. And in matriarchal societies, they gave that job to men. I know that Native Americans had matriarchal societies. And so there was just more patriarchal societies. So when society like progressed on, we led to this whole like place where women were supposed to still take care of kids, have kids, like get married. But even though society moved on and let women work, the household part did not progress. And so I think that, but I feel like our new generation, like the Gen Z generation, we're just like, yeah, no, we're getting married late and we probably won't have kids. So I don't know what society is going to look like after we grow up, but that's for the future. But I think, honestly, that's what I see. Is there anything? I think Jen had some other topics that she wanted to mention.
Not really. I'll be honest, not really. Being put on the spot.
I know. I think if we had like a spotlight, I would be like pointing it right towards Jen right now. But I just wanted to end this off with like a small reminder that like, no matter what you do as a girl in this society, you're never going to be shown, or like society will never not have a problem with you. You can either be me and show up to school in sweatpants or the same jeans and shirt every day, or dress up nicely, and the both of them should be fine. And we don't have a set time for us to get married. We don't have a set date for us to have kids. I mean, these are my reminders. Kashish, being our guest, what are your reminders?
I think it's just the expectations. Women are expected to do way better than men to like be, I don't know. My parents don't give me credit for a lot of things I do. And personally, my brother, he's not like too old, but still he can do like one thing. They'll be like clapping for him. And then I get like 100 on my math test and my dad's like, okay, it's just no credit given. And it's like, what is going on?
Yeah. And I mean, same. I think both of our brothers being the same age, my mom literally is half the time like, your brother's the better child. Like, he's 8. What is he doing that's better than I am? Like, what? And it's really upsetting. I mean, also, it's so sad. Like, this is just random thing that I thought of. When I was talking about marriage and all of that for women, I don't know why, but for women, like, let's say you're a girl, you were expected to be married to a guy, have kids with a guy, and just constantly, it's all about men. Like, for people that are part of the LGBT community, for example, it's so stigmatized. And for women, even if it's not stigmatized, it's fetishized. I pronounce that wrong, probably, but it's like, you can not like a girl without someone fetishizing it and it just becoming a whole different thing. And honestly, that's infuriating. And that, like, when it comes to love, I feel like anyone that, like, if anything goes wrong, that affects your mental health. That affects you in ways that, like, you wouldn't know. And I feel like that's really messed up. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of parents are just so against it. And it's so odd.
I think what you're trying to refer on is like the idea that women need a guy in their life to be happy. So when they're married, they should be with the guy, because the guy can make them happy and provide for them. But they don't realize that women are capable of being successful and making money on their own without any guy. That's the stigma in society.
That's very true.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. So APUSH has taught me a couple of things. One of the most significant ones was when my teacher was like, oh, there's Mr., Mrs., and Miss. And let's just look at this. Let's see what they both correlate to. Mr. is just like men in general. Like, they don't, like, they can be married, unmarried, like, whatever. It's their title. But then for women, it's like we got Mrs. and like Miss. And then we have and then it's Mrs., you're married. Miss, you're unmarried. And it depends on men. Because for some reason, men feel like they have to be included in everything. So we got that. But then she was very like, I like the independence that we have on Miss, like MISS, because that's our thing. Like, they're not allowed to have it. Ours.
Did you know that we used to not have an MS, and the MS was created because of this new magazine. It was called Miss Magazine with MS. And Miss Magazine was created because they were like, we're sick of the misses. So they got rid of the R and they made Miss. And it was by Gloria Steinem. If you know me, then you know that I really like Gloria Steinem. Like, I swear I have a picture of her on that wall right there. But yeah, Ms. was created pretty recently. And it's just like someone else, just like us, was fed up of the fact that we were so dependent on the fact, like, if we have a man in our lives or if we don't. And sorry, that was just like a little side note that I realized from what Jen was saying. Thank you so much, Kashish, for having this conversation with us about girls and society and the effect on us, because it's such a broad topic, but there's just so many things that we can talk about because there's so many upsetting things. And I know for a fact that when I'm upset, my mental health is not the best. And as for the listeners, enjoy these behind the scenes clips before we transition into talking with our mental health professional for this topic.
At the end of the day, the AP tests don't matter. hello, welcome.
And also follow us on Instagram at LOT. Wait, is it at L? Wait. Okay. Wait, I forgot. Okay, hey guys, Arjun here again for another episode. Wait, how's my mic? It's kind of low.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think just a couple of notes before we like kind of officially start, I guess. I mean, just
sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm wondering, my family just got, can you guys hear the baby?
a little bit, but it's no big deal. We can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
I'm always super conscious.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation about girls and mental health. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with our friend Kashish, but now we're joined with Dr. Johanna Murphy, who has a PhD in psychology and specializes in women and depression. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Murphy.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm a clinical psychologist practicing in Berkeley, and I do have a specialty in women's mental health.
That's great. So, as you've mentioned, you definitely have focused on women and probably have been for years now. And so now we wanted to ask you, just why did you choose to specialize in women? Specifically, since you've definitely probably had male clients in the past, what makes women issues different, and why did you choose to focus on them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I like to go back to a defining kind of moment for me post-college. I was very lucky to get to work in a women's clinic. I speak Spanish, and I got to work with pregnant women. And so I think that's such a big piece of what I saw was this hormonal aspect to mood. And along with that, really good self-care, education about health, just made such a big difference in birth outcome, how women handled the birth, meaning like kind of like how it went was in part dictated by how empowered they felt to take care of themselves in their pregnancy. And I got to work with midwives and really got this exposure to the power of both good physical health as well as emotional health. And I studied psychology undergrad here at UC Berkeley and decided I wanted to go on and study, do graduate studies. And I was at Columbia working actually with a research psychologist with girls' mental health and really looking at kind of like predictors of depression, like stress, basically biological correlates of depression, and then cultural, environmental correlates of depression. And from that time and really getting involved in research, I got really excited about women's health and realized that the role I wanted was more as a psychologist in a private practice, really doing one-on-one psychotherapy, and because I started to see like the real benefits of long-term psychotherapy. So I took my interest in women's mental health and then really brought it to my doctoral studies, and continued to follow the passion I have around prenatal and both perinatal, kind of hormonal issues, prenatal and postpartum mental health, and really focused on that in my practice, but also really focused on college mental health. So that was my main training. And in again, being in settings where I got to see how women responded to having some really good support, and how things, especially like mood issues, could be helped by having really good resources and support. I was really encouraged and decided, to continue to pursue clinical work and working in private practice. And some of my, I would say now, to kind of cut more to the present, some of my favorite work is working long-term with women. So I've worked with some women from the early 20s into their late 30s, and that kind of long-term work is really powerful and really makes big changes possible.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I actually also I guess I've had the same interests as you, even though I'm still in high school, but I definitely want to go into women's health. But you mentioned that throughout the years, you've worked from college age all the way up to women in their late 30s. And it's always present. There's always precursors to depression. So it's not that it can start at any time. And there's so many things in society that relate to this. I mean, you were mentioning the societal standards. And you did talk a lot about birth, childbirth, which it's a huge, a huge moment in any woman's life. It is something that is a stepping stone. But I do want to say, throughout history and throughout what I've read, what I've seen, women are very, their value in history has been related to childbirth, being able to have a child, being able to want a child, those kind of things. And I feel in the generation, especially in Jen and I's generation, a lot of people are starting to go against that. They're starting to realize things of that sort. But I just want to talk about historically. There's been so many things that have led to the societal standards we've had. They've led to these things. So historically, what has there been that's influenced the women's health now? I mean, I've noticed that women were always seen as inferior to men in society. It's just been written in our patriarchal societies. And so those kind of things, I feel just being engraved into our society has kept us away from helping women, but also has led to many issues. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a real interest of mine too, and maybe why I started with that prenatal clinic was these were women who had less resources, who very much wanted to be pregnant, were happy to be having a child, and with support, with some empowerment to really take care of their own health, I think were able to flourish in some hard circumstances. So that to me speaks to this sociocultural issue, this way that there's this, there's a lot of factors in, in oppression, basically, of women. That I believe is one of the key factors of depression, is feeling like you are not valued. And that's why I wanted to talk about that experience, because it was so pivotal, especially as a young woman, to be working in this clinic and see like, oh, but if you feel like you're valued, it doesn't matter of course it always matters what your resources are, especially if you have children. But like you're saying, I think if we empower young women to even start making choices like, hey, you don't have to have children if you don't want, or if you are, how can you take good care of yourself? That's where change can kind of really happen, where you start to even be able to feel like you can question these norms. Like, do I want children or not? It's not just how you're valued. Like, oh, of course, you're a woman, you should have a child, like this way.
Yeah, how valued that.
Yeah, right. This way that we can start to look at these historical influences. That's what I like that you're bringing up. And that's, women haven't really been seen as separate, even as having their own authority.
Oh no, we still see that like not happening. Women's rights. I don't want to get too political here, but
it's really a backlash, I think, right now. And for people like myself who, are in our 50s, it's totally, it's incomprehensible to me, honestly, that we're back here. It's devastating. It's really devastating. And so for me, this piece of like, how can you get young women like yourselves to start thinking critically about all of it, about politics, about your body? I really like that idea of like, the original 70s movement of like, the body politic and like how to push back on some of these. I think they've been sort of seen as like, okay, norms, like women, should just accept some of this stuff. And to have your generation, I feel like coming forward, being very clear, no, it's not okay. And I need support. I demand some support to, figure out what's true for me and my body, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that our confidence has kind of risen to go against our standards that exist in society and against men. And I really like that our generation's actually making more of an effort to fight against those standards, and that we feel like more women feel like we have our own decisions to make about our bodies and our life choices.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that. I'm really glad you feel that, because that's what's necessary, I think, to change things. And I guess the point with mental health that I've, the point with mental health being so key to women feeling empowered enough to make those kinds of choices and push back is what I'm most captivated by, because I see with support, and really good therapy or whatever else you can avail yourself of, you can start to question norms and maybe ingrained ways of thinking that aren't beneficial.
Yeah, some things that I've seen in my personal views is that, first of all, women were always known as the go-to caregivers. Many people are pushed away from working and going to work because they have to take care of their children. There is a lot of background sound. However, I do want to say that the society standards, but they're not only are they about children, there's also many things related to how we must look, how that we must look a certain way, we must act a certain way. It could be something as small as manspreading. Like, let's say you go outside and you're sitting, let's say you're just waiting at the doctor's office. And I guess it is a really comfy way to sit. So I will give it that. And then sometimes I've heard from my own mom that, hey, sit like a lady, which is something that it's like those kind of things ingrained into our society get in our head so much. Like, let's say you're going to prom and you wear a suit. automatically people start questioning things about your sexuality or that you're trying to be too manly because that isn't feminine enough. So I think another thing is that's really common is that if you go against standards, you get questioned for not being feminine enough, which make people question themselves. And so like identity crises and all of those things are like, I think stemmed from the standards that we've set.
Yeah. And yet what allows a young woman to feel empowered enough to say, I don't care, I'm going to wear the suit because that's how I feel cool, right? Like that's,
that's what I did.
Good for you. Like we need to be able to express ourselves how we want to express ourselves, and what facilitates that. What helps us to feel like we get to be our own unique selves. I mean, I think that's why we're here, is to really figure that out and let that up and out. And that's what I think addressing mental health concerns, especially with what you're talking about, like this subtle, or not so subtle message to be good, to be proper, to kind of pull yourself together and look like the lady in the billboard. It's endless. There's a perfectionism that will never be fulfilled. And I think that model is crumbling because it has to. There's no way to fulfill it. It's an endless, it's an endless hole that can't be filled.
I definitely think it also has to do with who you surround yourself with. And like Akshita said, there's like going to be parents that are very stuck in the past and they want to like continue that on. They'll teach their kids that. But friends, they'll more encourage you to like bring yourself out, and it'll give you confidence, and it'll basically like, I don't know, it just takes you more into the world to be yourself and to kind of like, I don't know, go against society norms. And I was really wondering how like women have been able to like empower themselves through clients that you've seen so far, and what really helps.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I love what you're bringing up about who you surround yourself with, because I like that. I really speak to with people that I work with. We were born into a family and we don't have a lot of choice about that, but we do, once we're 18 or we're out of the house, we have a choice in how we interact with them. And starting to learn to have healthy boundaries. I know there are cultural differences. I want to really address that. And not everyone is going to want to have a more separate, identity from their family, but we are living in a culture that is very individualistic. And so how do you work with that as a woman, given that you also have strong relational needs? I mean, that's something I do believe in, that women have this innate need for relationship, and men, everyone does. Everyone has a need to feel connected. I think that tension, though, of like wanting to stay connected, but also wanting to be separate, is something that I work a lot with. And when I've been able to help women feel like, oh, I can stay connected in a way that works for me to my family of origin, and then choose people in my life that really support me and make me feel good, and choose jobs that make me feel good. When you start to allow yourself to go in that direction, things just click and get better. That's what I see. Like there's sort of a momentum that gets going around allowing yourself to have more of what you want in your life, and not being as pulled down by some of these negative, influences that, we all just have. It's a complicated world these days, and it takes a lot to get out of a reactive mode and into more of a, mode of like choosing what you want, of claiming your agency, of feeling like it's your life. And that's what I was really trying to address about like working with pregnant women, is that like the more empowered you can feel to take care of yourself really on all levels, that's where I see real change happen for women, where they're happier you know?
Yeah. And I think feeling happy is like something that even if you're dealing with a lot, when you feel happy, it's at least a cover that just that keeps these things from exploding or getting too much.
Yeah.
And when you and Jen were mentioning how the people you surround yourself with is really important. And it's important because nowadays, no matter what you do, you don't satisfy at least one person. I mean, I think we've all heard the common phrase, if you're making everyone happy, you're not doing it right. And I mean, as much as we like going against society standards, like liking the color pink, that kind of stereotype sometimes people go against, but sometimes girls want to act like the girly girl they are, like live their princess dream. And we also like get people's opinions, in putting it in a nicer way, for doing that. For example, I have a princess balloon in my background because it was my sweet 16 a couple days ago, and I wanted a little, thank you. It was a little fairy sweet 16. And I did get a lot of opinions about how, oh, that's so like girly-ish. But it's kind of like if you try to go against standards and you do something that makes you not feminine enough, you also get the same amount of opinions when you are being the girly girl you want to be. And it's all about the people you surround yourself with, because the opinions people have, either whether it be because of toxic masculinity or internalized misogyny, whatever it is, whatever the term for it is, it's present and it gets in our heads.
Yeah.
I mean, this topic that we're doing today is all about girls and mental health. And girls' mental health are influenced by society. I mean, when we talk about, the people say that, oh, it's not just because of that. They might be dealing with something. Well, everyone's dealing with something. Everyone deals with things, and that's not girls and mental health. That's just mental health, and everyone has those issues. But there's so many things because of societal standards that we have to deal with that's even more. And I also want to bring up the fact that a lot of the times when women say this, like right now when we're talking about how women we're not saying women have it worse. We're just talking about the things women have. And I feel like that gets really invalidated because a lot of the times people start talking about all the other issues they are and they blame it on something else. And I think when you bring up history, they're like, oh no, it's progressing times. Things are better now. But that's only like the official cover. It's better because people are starting to talk about it, but I don't think we've reached a level. And I mean, I know that there's a lot of protests that happen, as we were talking about earlier, with the things against abortion laws right now. Near our house, actually, in Southern California, there was a lot of protests. I had friends that went to those, and it's just a lot of people are starting to go against things and change things, because I'm very like specific about this. I don't think we should be stuck in the 1970s. It's the thing is, it's bad here, but it's worse in developing countries. So it's like, and it's like in developing countries, you have many clients here, but you might know, like through your studies that you've done, what it's like in other places, and what as we were talking about, historical background it is. Sometimes it's religious too, and people blame it on religion. So do you have anything to say?
Yeah, no, it's so many good things you're bringing up. I mean, it's like we don't really have the space here to look at all the historical factors, but women are more depressed than men. That's what I want to say very clearly. And, the prevalence it's increased. So there's something going on where there's a pressure that women are feeling, a societal pressure that women are feeling that is problematic. And that is full stop, right? Like there's other things going on. Everyone has things going on. Mental health stuff is at a crisis in general for people, and young adults especially. And we need to be looking at what is contributing to that. And you're bringing up this very important point of the historical context. There is a real historical context for women being oppressed. And we're currently in a backlash around women, basically women are in more positions of power. There's Me Too. There's a lot of so I remember where we left off. We were talking about sociocultural factors,
Okay.
Specifically for historical context. And I think you were asking about cultural factors too. Like, I've worked with people from different cultures. So I can see how things like the individualistic culture, that we have affects like first generation people who have kids, college students that I've worked with, for example, how that really affects them, given that their parents are from a different culture and expect like an allegiance to family that like maybe other American families wouldn't expect, that kind of thing. We're asking about cultural factors like that. And I think that part is so important and significant. And there's this piece of gender, there's an added layer of, difficulty, honestly, with gender because of some of the history of trauma, that women go through, rape,
The 97 percentile, but 97% of women are all sexually harassed or deal with something.
It's real, right? That affects you, that feeling of being afraid, that feeling of being vulnerable. And then you were bringing up just kind of media, like it is still so prevalent. In fact, it's more prevalent now than ever because you guys have access 24/7 to images that are bombarding you of how to look, what looks good, what doesn't, and who gets to decide that? Who's deciding like, oh, this is beauty and this isn't? Like that's something we need to deconstruct and be thinking about. But these factors are real, they need to be addressed and they need to be worked through, I believe, often individual to individual, because how you grew up is different than how I grew up. And the historical context, what's going on in a given moment, in one's life. Like, for example, you guys are in high school and you've been through COVID, you've been through a lot of shootings in high schools and elementary schools. I mean, these are just terrifying things. It can't help but affect your feeling about the world.
It also doesn't help because it's no one's helping. Like something always takes away the help. And
earlier you were talking about how there was like social media and models on there that kind of like portray what like different people might view as beauty or like not. And I feel like a large contributor to that is cosmetics industries that are trying to promote their products and gain more profit off of it by kind of like feeding into our insecurities and making us feel like we have to have like that sort of like product and like we have to like have makeup in order to like go out in the world and kind of like have the confidence to do that.
I think another industry that's really profiting off this is, well, it's not really an industry, but it's diet culture. And diet culture, a lot, because of the new access to social media and YouTube and Netflix and everything, there's some shows that we watch where they the shows we grew up with, actually, Disney shows, they made people that have normal body types seem like they're not the right body type. They're not that ideal shape and things of that sort. And they're getting money. They're feeding off of the insecurities that they're giving us. And from a young age, I mean, Disney Channel is something that we watched when we were like 5 years old. And so kids at such young ages are just being nurtured and grown with these things. And it's just where people are getting money off this. It's like, you want to talk about why there's so many problems? It's because of finance, I guess.
Well, there's strong influences, right? And, like I've even heard about vaping nicotine, that's mainly targeted at like high school kids, that are buying, that product. It is. The financial piece is real, and there needs to be repercussions. There needs to be accountability. The way that we are all affected by advertising is real, and it's manipulative, it's psychological, it's insidious, it's been going on for a long time, and it needs to be addressed as something that very much affects our mental health. Like our sense of reality too. Like that's the one thing I just want to add. Like if we're constantly being bombarded by images or, just these influences, you start to have a hard time kind of assessing, like you're saying, what's a normal body type? Like, so I'm not seeing this one, representation of a woman anywhere. And yet that's the ideal, right? That's disconcerting and confusing. And where does that go in a young woman's psyche? I mean, you guys would be able to tell me that. It lands somewhere in the psyche, like this feeling of like, oh, I'm not quite good enough. And what do we do with that? I mean, that's what I'm curious about. How do we sublimate that? How do we like push that down? And then what I often see, is there's a reaction to like, oh, I'm not the right thing. And then the next thought is like, oh, I don't want to think about that. I'm going to push that down. And then what I often see is that pops up as anxiety later, because it's like there's an emotion that hasn't been recognized or digested or metabolized in a way that makes sense. So we're all in this constant jangled state of like so much doesn't make sense and isn't getting processed. And it's disconcerting. And I think that's why there's the rise in mental health issues. We feel disconnected. We feel this sense of like, what's real, a lack of like a grounded reality of values that we, believe in. And there's not a sense of, like you were saying earlier, like anybody's doing anything about it. It's just constant like problems, and no feeling of like, we're going to get together to work on some of these problems.
Yeah. I mean, earlier, well, I don't want to make this a therapy session, but you were asking how this affects young girls. Like, how does it make us feel when we see something and then we don't recognize it because we suppress it? Like, I mean, I want to suppress my emotions all the time. And it's the kind of thing that when we see that let's just say we see a model and we see that, oh, that's the kind of body type you see. When we see that our own body type or how we look is not being represented, is not equally shown, then we think it's wrong. And I think the only way to fix that is normalizing all kinds, like on social media, making it more realistic, or if anything, individually, like explaining to like girls that regardless of what the social media says, social media is a highlight reel. It's just supposed to show your best moments. Like everyone has their insecurities. Everyone has their own body, their own kind of thing. And I mean, I do say that the makeup industry and the diet industry, all those kind of things do profit off of us not looking the best. But I will say, I mean, personally, like makeup the reason we use it, and it's been transformed to use to like make us look prettier, this and that. But some people just genuinely like it, and that's how it should be. I mean, I love mascara. I'm wearing it right now. I have been wearing it for like months now. But it should only be there for a girl to have fun or want to use it for her personal gain, not to make herself look better for anyone else. And I think it's just been transformed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing you're saying that feels so important is back to this idea of choice. And like, you know, even what you were saying, like just because you have a princess balloon doesn't mean you're just girly, right? Like you get to have different parts of yourself. This is what also contributes to depression, is this feeling that we have to just be like one part of ourselves, that just one part of ourselves is okay. And that, like, you know, why is it that middle-aged girls start to get more depressed? There's a way that this feeling that like that kind of kid, spunky, you know, side of you, maybe the more feisty side of you is no longer okay once you start looking like a young woman. And what is that about? Why are we doing that to women? I think there's an objectification of women. You know, there's a lot to this that is problematic. And we need to address the ways that this affects women. And honestly, if it affects women, it affects everyone, you know? And I think there's, you know, an understanding of that starting to develop, that we need to, that, you know, that we really need to be educating women in sex education, you know, in mental health, in economics, in, you know, career, these ways that having more education really will make things better, you know. I love that banner, the future is female, you know, that like it is through looking at reproductive rights, all of these things that we will honestly ensure that we can stay here on this planet.
I really liked the part about like feisty, like how we kind of stopped being as, well, I don't want to say aggressive, but like,
say it. See,
yeah.
That's a great example of it. I'm really glad that you just like stopped yourself, like, I can't be aggressive. Why not? Why can't you be aggressive, but a young man can be?
Yeah. So, we kind of stopped, and I feel like that also has to deal with how we're perceived and how like it like relates to jobs and like stereotypical jobs for women, like nurses or secretaries. It's never really been like CEOs or like presidents or something like that. It's always just like something that's less than what we can do. And that I think that really affects how we can kind of approach things and how much we can like be aggressive about where we want to be in life and like our positions that we really desire.
Yeah, I really like that you let yourself just say it. Like what, you know, like ambition, right? Why can't we go after what we really want? I mean, I think there's a lot about female anger that really freaks people out. And there's a lot of history to that. And talking about history, you know, I mean, this is a country that literally burned women at the stake, who thought, you know, women who were deemed as witches, right? Like maybe they were midwives. Maybe they were really good at healing with plants, things that were a little bit unknown to men and scary to men. I think men are terrified by women's anger. And if we look back at the origins of that, I think it is as simple as everyone has a mother, you know, everyone has a mother. And that dependency on our mother is scary for a lot of people. And a lot of people witness female anger as really problematic because it was scary when we were kids to be dependent on someone and to have to handle their moods. I believe is some of what creates this sort of like, oh, it's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to be really just having your full voice, even, really having your full expression of self. That's what that's what I was talking about when I was thinking about the feisty. It's like, it's cute when it's a little girl, spunky little girl. Why does that change when it's a young woman? And I think even young women can get away with it to a certain point, but if it crosses a line, if you're seen as aggressive, what do we call that? The B word, right? Like there's a lot of this sort of subjugation of women's power. And when you were asking about that, I think it does come back ultimately to some of this fear of the real power women have as mothers, that's a very strong role, strong influence on humans, right? You don't have to be a woman to be a mother, but that has been classically the way it's happened. And so I think that that's complicated things. And basically this whole kind of oppression of women, I believe, partly comes from this fear of women's power. And so what do we see when women do rise all the way up to high positions of power? A lot of times they are called the B word. They are scrutinized, criticized.
They slept their way up.
Slept their way up, or other women don't support them. There's a lot of that backstabbing, which is really problematic. And then there's a lot of change that's good that's happening in the world. The Me Too movement to me is a great example of that in Hollywood, in entertainment, our biggest industry in this country, right? What do we export? We export entertainment. That is and that's then what's seen around the world, like we were talking about. Oh, this is what like a pretty woman should look like. This is what a good-looking couple should look like. So we're showing this sort of like model that is influencing the world. And I think that was an interesting part of our conversation, or what is influencing us, and can we be a little more critical about all of even the stimulus that we're taking in? That's where I feel like we have some agency. Oh, being on Instagram with these friends is bothering me. These friends, I feel a little more supported. How can we start like deconstructing that kind of stuff and have healthy discernment where we see what affects us in positive ways and lifts us up, and what suppresses us? Because it's that silencing we do to ourselves that is ultimately the most problematic.
Yeah. Something that I've always said whenever I talk to my mom is we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And something that I am a Grey's Anatomy fanatic. Like, I have watched all 18 seasons of that show. But there's my favorite episode. Well, I have two favorite episodes, and one of them is, it starts off and it mentions how there's an exact percentage in there, but I don't want to say it because I feel like I don't know if I know it exactly. However, it basically says women are much less likely in a setting where, let's say you're in a classroom, women are much less likely to raise their hands. But the most powerful thing after the whole episode, where it's basically an attack on the main character, who's a woman, by a larger man. And at the end, it says, it's like a message to women. It's saying, find your voice. And when you do, fill the damn silence. And I think that's the most powerful thing I've heard, because women are always leaning away from this because when you're in a workplace and let's say you have an idea, your idea will be most likely invalidated or not placed as equal as an idea that your male colleague might have. And these things make you feel invaluable. They make you feel like you're not worthy of being in the place you are, even though you've worked just as hard. And I definitely think these are things that have affected us, as you've mentioned and Jen mentioned as well. But I think, as you said, things are changing. For example, the wage gap that was quite bad. There's still a pay disparity, but I think for like at least some specialties, it's increasing, like it's getting better. And I think that's because, as we've mentioned, like Gen Z and people are starting to like go against the standards or trying to do more. But what else I've noticed, and we talked this whole time about how women have been put down more, have dealt with more issues. They're more likely to get depression, but they're also more likely to, or less likely to come get help. Over the years, statistically, women have been known to get help less. Have you noticed that? Or like, do you know why that would be? Like, why are we less likely to go get help?
I mean, I think because of this exact thing we're talking about, we're taught to silence ourselves. We're taught to suppress our emotions. We're taught to, from a young age, cross your legs. Don't sit like a man, like you're saying, you know. I do think we have to address, though, like that there are real barriers to accessing mental health. I want to be very clear that, you know, it's a privilege to be able to, you know, get yourself to a therapist, to pay for it. You often have to have a job, to have insurance, to get, you know, to get in to see a therapist. So there's this disparity that is not just gender. It is definitely economic. It's cultural. There's a lot of factors here. But, you know, I see a lot of women. That's really who I see. So there are women who are accessing mental health. You know, there are definitely, and what's exciting is because of shows like your guys, you know, because of this sort of exposure to mental health issues, more people are accessing it. And, you know, to put a positive plug in for media, there's more and more representations of people going to therapy, you know, of therapy not just being like a scary, like, black box where you're going to get shrunk. You know, everybody is like, oh, are you going to shrink me? You know, when I say I'm a therapist, and it's like, no. You know, so there's less fear of emotions is my point. You know, there's less fear, less stigma, and yet there's still this real access, you know, barriers to access issue that I want to be clear, a lot of which is economic. And you know, and health insurance issues, and, you know, it's there's a lot to our health system that is problematic. But I think we teach young women to just kind of, I think you're right, like be quiet and handle it. And you know, when you hear young women whining or complaining a lot, there's a lot of that like shushing that goes on. And I think that's there's a lot of reasons for that. And we just have to, like you're saying, get better at finding our voices and using them.
I definitely agree. And hopefully there will be more, like the numbers will increase for how many women go to seek mental health like help. And I love that there's a lot of women that are coming to like therapists or like psychologists such as yourself to improve their mental health. Yeah. Do you have any last comments that you'd like to put in?
Yeah, I mean, it's just really moving to me to see young women like yourselves asking these kinds of questions, engaging in this kind of conversation. wondering about these issues. The psychological is for everyone. We all can feel better, is what I want to say. We can all learn how to think about ourselves in ways that help us to ultimately feel better. And if we feel better, that makes for a better world. Like we were saying earlier, if we're happier, just everything feels a little less heavy. And we all need that in these difficult times. So I appreciate you guys putting energy into this project. And I hope that this helped, kind of spread the word about thinking about women's health issues, about just starting to have conversations about what can change some of this disparity in women in depression, and how we can get together to work on these issues.
Thank you so much for talking. We appreciate you spending your time. And just to wrap us off, I would like to end us with one small quote, and it's by Michelle Obama, and it basically says, "Communities and countries, and ultimately the world, are only as strong as the health of their women." And the men, luckily, we're spreading awareness about women's health here, and just how important it is to talk about their mental health. So, to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Johanna Murphy and our friend Kashish in the last segment. And we hope that you come and join us next time on another conversation about mental health. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to check out all of our other episodes on our YouTube channel, on Spotify, or whatever you're using. And we'll see you next time.